Okay, so yeah, I'm Sharon Gissy. I'm the organizer of the Mental Filmness Film Festival, and if you just wanted to introduce yourself and your film, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my name is Melanie Ekholdt, and I am a child psychiatrist and a directress of this documentary called In Love with Craziness.
Okay, great. You talk a little bit in the film how your attention was first drawn to Michael. And I was wondering if maybe you could speak a little bit about what, kind of inspired you to reach out to him.
Yeah, I was watching a talent show in the autumn with my daughter, with my teenager daughter, and then suddenly I saw this young man performing a rap song with some special lyrics. The lyrics was, "Why should I judge myself when everybody else is judging me?" And I just love these words. And then after this performance on this live show, he was interviewed and he talked about his feelings, and he was so human and he was so lively, and the music, and he had this kind of magnetic energy. And then I Googled him and I saw that he had actually a story of drug use, and in this newspaper article I saw, he said himself he started to use drugs because of ADHD medicine, drugs. And as a child psychiatrist, I have been prescribing a lot of these kind of drugs. So I got kind of stuck. How is that? Where does this connection come from? So that was the start of this journey. Then I had to contact him via Facebook, as you can see in the documentary, and I asked him to talk about his story to young therapists, because I work as a teacher for young therapists and young doctors going to be child psychiatrists. I work there, and I still do. And I asked him to come and talk about his story to these young doctors who are going to become child psychiatrists, and he said yes.
Okay, great. I mean, that kind of it sets up another question that I had, which is that was actually one of my favorite parts of this film, is that you were willing to kind of learn from him and question your own methods. And I mean, in my experience, psychiatry is not always an exact science. You talked about how you changed your perspective on prescribing the ADHD drugs. So I was kind of wondering if you're willing to talk about it, how that changed, or I don't know if there were specific guidelines, like you need these symptoms and then, we'll consider it, or how that changed basically.
Yeah. I noticed when I talked with him that, and he talked about the doctor prescribing pills to him through his mother, and I said that this doctor was not quite. He forgot the nuances, that it's not that always just one solution. And then when I was saying that, and I had the camera on, I remember that inside me everything was kind of falling apart inside me, because at that moment, you cannot see that in the movie, but in that moment I am kind of losing my professional self. My professional self is kind of falling apart, because I am there at that moment, understanding that I have been a doctor like that, without giving enough information to a young person and to the parents about the side effects. I didn't give enough information about other kind of alternatives. I didn't include them enough in the reflection, in the decision making. So And that was because I was doing as the other child psychiatrist, because at that time, this is 5 years ago actually, 4 or 5 years ago, and that time the guidelines were more said that it is proven that the ADHD medicine is working, and they were not that much focused on involving the patient. Now, 5 years later, the guidelines, they have changed actually. So now they include much more the view of the patients and the parents and the family of what kind of perspective do you have on the use of drugs, and before even testing normally. That is written in the guidelines now, that you should kind of include the family and the children already there. And then if they want to include drugs in the treatment plan, then they can test it out in 4 weeks. And then it is another new moment of decision making where they include does the symptoms change and the function in the daily life, and how are the side effects. And then together make the decision making to continue to use the ADHD drug or not. And then it is also now in the guidelines written that at least after once a year, there should be an evaluation, and there should also be pauses. So the guidelines that change now, and they're much better, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like a more kind of holistic process.
Exactly.
The whole picture. And
yeah. But it was not like that at that time. And so it was a big ethical dilemma for me actually then.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And another question I had is how, maybe you have a lot of experience obviously with adolescents, but just how you got him to open up so much about his experience. He's very open, he makes himself very vulnerable. And what was that kind of connection, and how did you do that?
I was just open, I think. I was just curious, and it was not a doctor-patient relationship. It was like, and that was kind of maybe in the beginning more doctor-patient, and then quite fast it moved to like 2 human beings, like one 45-year-old lady and a young man. And it was because we were talking about his text, I think. The lyrics was the interview manual actually. So his text, his story was the guidelines of our conversation. So I kind of included his art, his creativity. And I think that is the reason why I got the trust, because I kind of opened up and included it and respected it, and we used it like the base of making the stories. So I think that must be the reason.
Yeah, you seemed like you were more friends than anything else. And you kind of touched upon his art, and that was also the thing I wanted to ask about is, in your experience, is that kind of a good, people like Michael who have kind of self-destructive tendencies, to have kind of like a channel through art like that, is that a good kind of, or is that something you've seen a lot to help people?
After having this conversation with Michael, this was in the summertime, and I went back to the child guidance clinic. And then of course, like having this summer where I was like immersing this lyrics and the music, when I talked with the young person, then I was so, and what do you like to do when you are with friends or alone? What is your thing? And so I got very inspired to ask the young person, like, do you like to make something digital, or do you like to do drawings, or do you like to make music? And then nearly every patient I had, they kind of had something to share, or or just like what kind of movie do you like to watch now? What kind of music? So I continue to include that in my therapy sessions with young person. Yes. And I think that there are other child psychiatrists do it as well, but it's not like in the guidelines when you have like a boy with ADHD or a girl with anorexia. It is not written in the guidelines and ask about the interest, you know. So that is more like if you're a therapist. If you are a child psychiatrist, like working a lot with therapy, then it is a very natural thing doing. But if you're child psychiatrist, not like deepening into therapeutic methodic and relationship, then I think it's more difficult to include it in the conversation and to make space for it.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting that you kind of bring up the difference between psychiatry and therapy, because psychiatry, and this is also in my experience, since more about kind of like prescribing medication, sometimes I feel like that bigger picture gets kind of, you know, it's more about the symptoms and the prescription. Has that been your experience as well, or?
Yeah, it is even in Norway difficult to find space for this open conversation, you know. More like therapy is more open. It's more like the child has to come with their perspective, their imagination and their feelings and thoughts, and it is difficult also. The only way of doing it is to kind of develop yourself as a therapist while you're working as a child psychiatrist. Then it is possible. But if you're not into this kind of environment of thinking about what is healing, what is a therapy, then it's very difficult to keep that space, actually, because the system, of course, want to hurry up and the waiting list, and we have kind of an idea that it's important that this waiting list should be shortened, and the child guidance clinics, they get kind of problems if they don't follow the waiting list. So we kind of want to hurry up, and myself, I was thinking like, yeah, the best way I can help is giving ADHD drugs. I thought that was the way I was helping. But now I think it is one way sometimes, but there are many other solutions as well.
Okay, so just a couple more questions. So Michael kind of stood out as unique to you, I guess. So you didn't experience that with any of your other patients who took the ADHD medication with the, like, what were kind of the side effects or effects that you saw from that sometimes?
Of course, sleep problems, as he's talking about, and eating problems, and more like parents that have been talking about that their child is getting more calm, more passive, more inactive. Yeah, so of course then with the sleeping problems, I try to help with the melatonin often, you know, and with the eating problems, try to talk about the meals, how the teacher can help the child to not forget to eat, and maybe sometimes involve professional with clinician in working with food. So kind of try to so make a solution of the problem of the side effects. So and of course there are I still prescribe ADHD drugs. I do that, of course. But I think, and I talk with the kid, I talk with the parents, I use much more time to reflect, and I on it. So for me, ADHD is not a simple illness anymore. It's a child with, or a young person with, and a family and a school with a problem. So, and it's, even if it's very common, for me, it's an important problem. It's I don't like to take it too easy. So I try to be patient and talk and not hurry up.
Okay. So yeah, one last question. I mean, and this is something, you know, if it's not something you or he feel comfortable sharing, but we were just talking about Michael a little bit, you know, how he's changed or what he's like now.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, so Michael now, he's a father of still this baby is now 3 years or 4 years maybe, Saga. That means story, actually, is the name of the daughter, and he lives with with the mother of the daughter in the house in this small town on the west coast of Norway. And he's working in a shop, as a clothes shop, and he's assistant leader, manager in that shop, and he's happy with his life. And we are working together still. We're not finished with the book, but we are editing stuff together. So we are still friends and talking about life and movies and music still.
Oh, that's great. You know, one other thing I was wondering, you know, do you still have a relationship with him and what it's like? So you kind of touched upon that too. I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to say about the film, or?
Yeah, is that it's not only about ADHD, it's also about trauma. It's about the fact that the system didn't really understand when he had to stop the contact with his father, and the child protection helped with that. So it was kind of a trauma behind, but that was kind of not included in the diagnosis. And so that I think that is important to include PTSD, you know, in the differential diagnosis with ADHD. That is important. No, it's more normal to do it now, but then 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of, there were two different kind of world, talking about ADHD and trauma. Now these worlds, they are kind of joining. And when I talk about trauma with my patients, I always talk about grow, that we can also grow by trauma, and we can grow by loving. And that was kind of the most surprising part of me. Was this part when he talks about love, you know, about self-care and self-love and accept of yourself. So I still work with that, how to accept myself and how to love myself so I can love others, you know, so include love and attachment, of course. So that is a very important message in this movie for me. I don't know how it was for you to watch that part. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, his transformation was amazing. And it's part of it is that he had, I mean, that's so hard, but he had confidence in himself, you know, and you could tell he liked himself as a person and was proud of his art and what he'd overcome. So I think that really came across. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and for submitting the film. It has a great message, and I really love your relationship. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting kind of relationship where in some ways he's kind of like the teacher to you, and I like how you're you know that. So so I will link to this interview from the festival site, and hopefully people check out the movie and check out our conversation about it. So thank you, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Okay. Well, have a nice day and good luck with all of your future projects.
Yeah, you too. I'm looking forward to see how this digital film festival is working.
Yeah, me too.
Good work, Sharon.
Great. All right. Well, have a nice day. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you too. Bye bye.